Imagine, just for a moment, a nation tearing itself apart. Its very soul, its identity, pushed right to the edge by divisions so deep they seemed, well, impossible to bridge.
It's hard to fathom sometimes, isn't it? How conflicts, especially internal ones, can completely reshape a country, its people, everything.
Exactly. And that's the kind of pivotal moment we're exploring today. We should mention you are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation powered by Google's NotebookLM for deeper, more dynamic book summaries. We're diving into Bruce Catton's This Hallowed Ground. It's really seen as the definitive history of the American Civil War, but specifically from the Union side.
Right. And Catton covers a whole suite, doesn't he? From the tensions building in 1860, right through the fighting, Appomattox, and even Lincoln's assassination in 65.
He does, and the book shows how the war just fundamentally changed the country, but also the individuals caught up in it.
What always struck me about Catton, and this book particularly, is the writing style. It's incredibly lyrical, almost like reading a novel. People compared it to War and Peace, which says a lot. It makes dense history really engaging.
Absolutely. So our goal today is to guide you through those critical years, give you a solid understanding of Catton's insights into this defining time for America. Let's get into it.
Okay, so Catton starts by really setting the stage. Mid-19th century America. You had these two vastly different societies, didn't you?
Yeah, the industrial North versus the agricultural South, which was, of course, heavily reliant on slave labor. They weren't just different regions, they were almost opposing civilizations.
That contrast is key. Catton emphasizes that slavery wasn't just an issue, it was the issue. It underpinned the entire Southern economy, their social structure, everything.
Right. It created that fundamental incompatibility, the idea Lincoln talked about, that the nation couldn't last half slave and half free. Catton shows how this tension had been building for decades.
And then Lincoln's election in 1860 just lights the fuse. Catton describes this atmosphere of, well, near hysteria.
South Carolina secedes, other states follow.
Exactly. And then you have that incredibly tense standoff at Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor. Catton really builds the suspense there, the failed attempts to find a peaceful way out.
It's like watching a slow-motion train wreck.
Yeah.
And Catton's description of the actual start of the fighting, the Confederate bombardment, on April 12, 1861. He frames it as the exact moment the political crisis became undeniably war.
It galvanized the North, didn't it? Gave Lincoln the justification he needed to call for troops.
And suddenly everyone's rushing to volunteer. Catton captures that initial wave of enthusiasm, this widespread belief on both sides that it would be a quick, glorious adventure.
Yeah, over in a few weeks, one big battle and everyone goes home heroes. That was the thinking.
That didn't last long, though. Catton shows how that illusion just evaporated at the first battle of Bull Run or Manassas in July 61.
Oh, completely. A shocking defeat for the Union. Not just a loss, but a chaotic rout.
It instantly signaled this wasn't going to be some short romantic war. It was going to be long, bloody, and incredibly costly. A real wake-up call, as Catton puts it.
Yeah, a grim awakening.
So after Bull Run, the focus shifts heavily to the Eastern Theater. Catton spends a lot of time on General George McClellan taking command of the Army of the Potomac. What was his deal, this very careful, methodical approach?
Well, Catton portrays McClellan as brilliant at organizing. He took raw recruits and turned them into a disciplined army. That was his strength. But he was incredibly cautious, always seemed to overestimate the enemy, always hesitant to fully commit his troops. You see it in the Peninsula Campaign in 62.
Right, the slow advance on Richmond.
Exactly. Slow, methodical. And ultimately, despite having advantages, he pulls back after the 7 days battles. He inflicted heavy losses on Lee, but didn't achieve the main goal. Missed opportunities seemed to be his signature.
So the potential was there, but maybe not the killer instinct.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Robert E. Lee takes the initiative, invades the North, leading to Second Bull Run and then Antietam in September 62.
Yeah.
Antietam's huge, right?
Huge and horrifying. Catton describes it as the single bloodiest day in American history. Tactically, it was sort of a Union victory. Lee's invasion was stopped. He had to retreat.
But again, McClellan doesn't really follow up.
Right, he lets Lee's army escape. But, and this is crucial in Catton's telling, that victory, however incomplete, gave Lincoln the political cover he needed.
For the Emancipation Proclamation.
Precisely. January 1st, 1863. Catton shows this wasn't just a moral statement. It fundamentally changed the purpose of the war.
It wasn't just about preserving the Union anymore.
No, it was also about ending slavery. Catton highlights Lincoln's strategic brilliance here, declaring slaves in Confederate territory free. Well, it made it impossible for countries like Britain or France who opposed slavery to side with the Confederacy.
Ah, smart. Prevented foreign intervention.
Exactly. And it gave the Union a powerful moral high ground. It brought African American soldiers into the fight in large numbers and gave Union soldiers a clearer, deeper reason for their sacrifice.
A truly transformative moment. But even with that, the Union still struggled in the East, didn't they? Catton covers some really bad defeats. Fredericksburg under Burnside, Chancellorsville under Hooker.
Oh, absolutely disastrous. Catton points to poor leadership, flawed plans. Even when the Union had more men, they just couldn't seem to overcome Lee's tactical skill in those battles. It was incredibly demoralizing for the North.
Which makes the next big event even more critical. Lee tries another invasion of the North. And Catton brings us to Gettysburg, July 1st to 3rd, 1863. He really paints this as the turning point.
He does. The detail is incredible. How the battle started almost by accident, the ferocious fighting on the second day, Little Round Top, Devil's Den.
And then Pickett's charge on the third day.
That iconic doomed assault. Catton portrays it as the Confederacy's high watermark. After Gettysburg, their hopes of winning by taking the fight to the north were essentially over. The momentum shifted decisively.
It's Catton's way of weaving strategy with the human experience. It really makes you stop and think,
Yeah.
engage with these moments critically.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of critical analysis, that's something we aim for on Mindful Moments, our YouTube channel. It features AI book analysis designed to spark reflection and rational thought on complex topics, much like this one. Worth checking out if you enjoy these kinds of discussions.
Big point.
So Gettysburg is a massive turning point in the East. But Catton reminds us there's a whole other war happening out west, equally important, really.
Absolutely. Controlling the Mississippi River was a key Union objective. Catton details things like the capture of New Orleans, but the real focus out west becomes Vicksburg.
Under Ulysses S. Grant.
Right. Catton shows Grant's sheer tenacity during that long, difficult siege. Vicksburg finally falls on July 4th, 1863.
The day after Gettysburg ended. Incredible timing.
Isn't it? And Vicksburg falling gives the Union complete control of the Mississippi, effectively cutting the Confederacy in two. It also solidifies Grant's reputation.
As the guy who gets things done.
Pretty much, which leads, as Catton explains, to Lincoln promoting him to General-in-Chief of all Union armies in March 1864. This marks a real shift in strategy.
How so?
It becomes about coordinated pressure, everywhere, all at once, relentless aggression. Grant understands it's a war of resources and manpower, and he's going to leverage the Union's advantages.
And you really see that in the Overland Campaign in Virginia. Grant goes directly after Lee. Catton describes the fighting in the wilderness, Spotsylvania, Cold Harbor. The casualties were just staggering, weren't they?
Horrific on both sides. But Grant kept pushing. Catton portrays it as this brutal, grinding advance. Grant knew the Union could replace its losses. Lee couldn't, not indefinitely. It was grim math, but effective strategy.
Meanwhile, further south, you have General Sherman.
William Tecumseh Sherman. Catton details his capture of Atlanta in September 64. That was huge, not just militarily, but politically. It boosted Northern morale right before the election, helping Lincoln win.
And then Sherman really becomes infamous for his next move.
The March to the Sea, November-December 64. Catton describes it vividly cutting loose from supply lines, living off the land, but also destroying infrastructure, railroads, anything that could support the Confederate war effort.
It wasn't just military, it was psychological warfare.
Right.
Breaking the South's will to resist.
Exactly. Catton makes it clear that after Sherman's march, Confederate defeat was just a matter of time. While this is happening, Grant is tightening the siege around Petersburg near Richmond. Lee's trapped.
The end is clearly in sight by early 1865. Catton describes Lee's final attempt to escape, Grant's pursuit, leading to Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th.
And the surrender scene Catton paints is quite moving. Grant's terms are generous. Let the men keep their horses, their sidearms, just go home. Lee accepts with dignity. Catton frames it as the end of the fighting and maybe, just maybe, the start of reconciliation.
A fragile beginning, but then just days later, tragedy strikes.
Lincoln's assassination, April 14th, 1865, John Wilkes Booth. Catton presents this as an absolute catastrophe, not just for the loss of Lincoln the man, but for the future.
Because Lincoln was seen as the one person who could guide the nation through Reconstruction.
Precisely. His vision of healing, malice toward none, was desperately needed. His death plunged the nation back into uncertainty and bitterness. It was a devastating blow, right when unity was most crucial.
Throughout this epic story, Catton really excels at portraying the key figures, doesn't he? Lincoln's growth, his political skill, his moral center.
Absolutely. And Grant's pragmatism and determination, Lee's tactical brilliance even as the opponent. McClellan's caution, Sherman's understanding of total war, Stonewall Jackson's ferocity. It's a full cast.
But it's not just about the generals. Catton spends a lot of time on the common soldiers, too, their initial reasons for fighting patriotism, adventure.
And then the grim reality, the marches, the disease, the terror of battle with those new, deadlier rifles Catton describes. He shows their disillusionment, their weariness, the sheer human cost through their letters and experiences. It makes it very real.
You also mentioned the role of escaped slaves, the contrabands. Catton highlights how their presence forced the Union to confront slavery directly.
Yes, their flight to Union lines created a practical and moral dilemma that pushed the issue forward, influencing policy like the Emancipation Proclamation. They actively shaped the war's direction.
And Catton weaves in other important details the impact of technology, like the telegraph and railroads, the shocking state of medical care, the naval blockade, the ironclads.
Right, all these factors, military, technological, economic, political, even diplomatic, like keeping Europe out, Catton shows how they all intertwine to shape the conflict and its outcome.
It's no wonder this hallowed ground got such high praise. The best single-volume treatment, critics called it. A modern Iliad. It really holds up.
It does. And the themes, Catton explores national unity, division, how war transforms a society, leadership under pressure, they still feel incredibly relevant, don't they?
They really do. And remember, you can find more analyses like this, designed to make you think, on mindful moments and across all of our deep dives.
Definitely worth exploring.
So as we wrap up, here's something to reflect on. How did the lessons from that period, a nation so deeply split, then forced into a painful reunion, how do those lessons speak to the challenges we face today in trying to find common ground and manage change?
A powerful question to consider.
Click the link on screen for the in-depth book critique. Please subscribe to this channel, share this summary if you found it useful, and consider purchasing the book through the link provided. And as always, think rationally.